My parents secretly sold Grandma's home. They never expected her final move. I never imagined the day would come when my own parents would betray the one person who had sacrificed everything for us. But what hurt even more was watching my 82-year-old grandmother smile through the pain, as if she already knew something none of us did. And she did. By the time my parents celebrated the sale of her house, Grandma had already made one final move that changed every single one of our lives. My name is Emily, and my grandmother Margaret raised me more than my parents ever did. She lived in a beautiful old lakeside house that had been in our family for over 60 years. Every Christmas, every birthday, every happy memory I had started inside those walls. Grandma wasn't rich. She simply refused to waste money. She fixed everything herself, baked fresh bread every Sunday, and somehow made every visitor feel like family. After Grandpa passed away, she stayed alone in that house. Everyone kept telling her to move into a retirement home. She always smiled. This house still needs me. None of us realized someone else needed that house much more. My parents. Dad's construction business had quietly collapsed. Mom had accumulated tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. Instead of asking for help, they saw Grandma's house as their escape. One afternoon, I visited unexpectedly. Their voices echoed through the kitchen. "We can convince her," Mom whispered. "If she refuses," Dad answered, "we'll use the power of attorney." I froze. Power of attorney? Grandma had signed limited paperwork months earlier, after a short hospital stay. She believed it only allowed Dad to help pay bills if she became sick. She never imagined it could be abused. I wanted to burst into the room immediately. But something stopped me. I quietly left before they noticed me. That evening, I drove straight to Grandma's house. She greeted me with warm tea and homemade apple pie. I struggled to tell her everything. When I finally finished, she didn't cry, she didn't panic. She simply looked out the window toward Grandpa's favorite apple tree. Then she smiled. "So, I suppose they've finally decided." Her calmness confused me. "Weren't you surprised?" "Oh, sweetheart. I've known your parents my whole life." I was only wondering when desperation would become greed. I begged her to call a lawyer immediately. Instead, she gently squeezed my hand. "Not yet. Let them believe they're winning." I had no idea what she meant. 2 weeks later, everything happened quickly. Dad used the power of attorney. The house was listed for sale. Grandma was told it would be better for her comfort. Within 10 days, a wealthy investor bought the property. My parents celebrated like they had won the lottery. New cars, luxury vacations, expensive restaurants. Mom proudly told everyone they were finally starting over. Meanwhile, Grandma quietly packed a single suitcase. She moved into a small apartment across town. She never complained, never argued, never even looked angry. I couldn't understand how someone could lose everything and remain so peaceful. Then, 1 month later, the investor called my father. He sounded furious. "There are legal documents attached to this property." "What documents?" "The lifetime occupancy covenant." Dad turned white. "What?" The investor explained that years earlier, Grandpa and Grandma had legally recorded a permanent life estate agreement. No matter who owned the property, Margaret Harris had the absolute legal right to live there for the rest of her life. The house could be sold, but nobody could remove her. Nobody. Not even the new owner. Dad screamed that it was impossible. The investor disagreed. His attorneys had already verified everything. The agreement had been filed decades earlier. It was completely valid. The sale wasn't canceled. But the house had instantly lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. The furious buyer demanded compensation. Then another surprise arrived. Grandma calmly informed everyone she wasn't moving back. Instead, she rented the house from the investor for $1 per year, exactly as allowed under the agreement. The investor accepted. Paying $1 annually was still better than years of lawsuits. My parents couldn't believe it. The house they had sold still belonged to Grandma in every way that truly mattered. Neighbors quickly learned the truth. Family members stopped answering my parents' phone calls. Even friends began avoiding them. But Grandma never celebrated. She simply watered her flowers every morning like nothing had happened. One evening, I asked her the question that had been bothering me for weeks. "When did you prepare all this?" She smiled. "The week after your grandfather died." She walked into the living room and opened an old wooden cabinet. Inside sat Grandpa's journal. He worried that someday money might become more important than family. So together we protected this house. Tears filled my eyes. "They planned this together?" Grandma nodded. "We hoped the documents would never matter. I prayed our children would never give us a reason to use them." Several months later, Dad came to visit, for the first time in years. He wasn't wearing an expensive watch. He wasn't driving a luxury SUV. The lawsuits had drained nearly everything. He sat quietly across from Grandma. "I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long time. "I believe you're sorry. But are you sorry because you hurt me? Or because your plan failed?" Dad couldn't answer. Silence filled the room. Finally, Grandma stood. She walked into the kitchen, returned with 2 cups of tea, and placed one in front of him. "Forgiveness," she said softly, "doesn't erase consequences. But carrying hatred only creates more pain." Dad lowered his head and cried. I had never seen him cry before. Not when Grandpa died, not when he lost his business. Only then. Months later, he slowly began rebuilding relationships instead of chasing money. Mom needed much longer. Trust, once broken, doesn't return overnight. As for Grandma, she continued living peacefully beside the lake. Every Sunday, she still baked fresh bread. The apple tree still bloomed every spring. Children still waved as they passed her porch. And every time I visited, she reminded me of one lesson I will never forget. A home isn't protected by walls. It's protected by wisdom. And sometimes, the kindest people prepare for the worst, not because they expect betrayal, but because they hope they'll never need the protection. Whenever I look at that old lakeside house today, I don't think about the people who tried to sell it. I think about the woman who quietly proved that patience, wisdom, and dignity will always outlast greed. Because in the end, Grandma didn't win by taking revenge. She won by refusing to let anyone steal the life Grandpa had built with her.